This is Reporter Room with Jessica Della Davies.
Hello, friends. Come on in, come on in. It's great to see you. We have a lot of new information in the Bryan Kohberger case. Oh my gosh. Today we're going to be talking about everything we know. We're going to put all the pieces of the puzzle together on Bryan Kohberger's parents. We're going to talk about Bryan Kohberger's health disorders, his creepy new selfie, and the victims' families are sounding the alarm. They are becoming more upset. We're going to talk about what they've said and why. Were they tricked? So my name is Jessica Della Davies. I'm an investigative journalist, and my job is to investigate crimes, crime scenes, and potential suspects, and share with you how to do the same thing. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. It's free, and it helps me out a lot. I can't get to 60,000 subscribers without your support. Like, share, leave a comment, and know that everything I'm sharing is my opinion. This video is for adults only. Viewer discretion is advised. So come on in, tell me where you are from. You can tell me what state, what country, what continent, whatever you feel comfortable sharing. So today we're going to be talking about Bryan Kohberger's parents. Let's start with that. We're going to talk about everything that we know so far about mother and father. Okay. So Bryan Kohberger's parents, Michael and Marianne Kohberger, lived in and still live in Eastern Pennsylvania. They have held jobs that are, traditionally working class jobs. They were initially cooperating with law enforcement, but later decided that they would maintain a low profile while supporting BK. Now, his guilty plea and sentencing, this revealed a lot of details about their actions and the phone calls that they had with Bryan Kohberger after the crimes were committed. And a lot of people, including myself, have wondered if, this is another Brian Laundrie, Gabby Petito situation. But let's talk about all of this. Let's put all the pieces of the puzzle together. Let's dig into these parents. So BK's mom worked at the school system while his father was a maintenance employee. He was raised alongside his two sisters, Melissa and Amanda. Now, according to CBS News, Amanda worked as a school counselor, and Melissa is a psychologist or licensed mental health professional. So Amanda also appeared in a low budget slasher film called 2 Days Back, which is about a group of students who were done away with by an SK. So that's interesting. But from the New York Times, Bryan Kohberger earned his bachelor's degree in psychology at a local community college. He then went on to get his master's degree at DeSalles. So prior to being arrested, Michael and Marianne, this is prior to Bryan Kohberger being arrested, not Michael and Marianne, but Michael and Marianne raised Bryan and his two sisters in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. Now, Bryan was arrested at his parents' Albrightsville home in December of 2022. So nearly 2 months after he was arrested, a new search warrant was unsealed that showed a variety of items that was taken from the Kohberger home. And according to the warrant, they found a Smith & Wesson pocket knife, another knife, a Glock handgun, 3 empty magazines, black face mask, black gloves, 1 black hat, a green leafy substance in a bag, and a book underlined page 118 and Bryan Kohberger's AT&T cell phone bill. Now, in August of 2025, digital forensic expert Heather Barnett, who led the team, this is the Celebrate team, that investigated Bryan Kohberger's phone and hard drive. Now, she spoke out to people and said that he called Marianne multiple times after the November 13th crime. So early that morning, he was on the phone with her. He was on the phone on and off with her the whole day. And we're going to talk about that in a second. So put a pin in that. But he first called his mom for the first time at 6:13 a.m. that morning. She didn't answer. She's probably trying to sleep. Eventually, she does pick up, and they talked for 36 minutes, followed by another call. This is call number 2 at 8:03 a.m. This one lasted a little longer, 54 minutes. And this means that Bryan and Marianne were on the phone when he was driving back to the 1122 King Road home. We know he got back there just after 9 a.m. So at 8:03, he was on the phone with his mom. For 54 minutes, he was on the phone with her in the car driving back to the crime scene, you guys. So they would speak on the phone 3 more times for a total of 6 times, and they spoke for a total of 3 hours on November 13th of 2022. So let's look at what was going on, what the Celebrate team found was going on with Bryan Kohberger and mother and father. That's how he had his parents listed in his cell phone. He had them listed as mother and father, and he also talked to them like that. If Marianne would not pick up the phone and Bryan was trying to get hold of her, he would say, "Father, why isn't mother answering me?" I mean, just it's weird, right? So the phone calls after the November 13th crimes, BK called his mom, and the cell phone indicate that they did talk for 3 hours that day. Now let's go back and consider that cross-country drive with his dad, right? With Michael Kohberger. So we know that during the fall semester, it wasn't over. Bryan Kohberger, as a teaching assistant, still would have had to have helped with grading the papers for the midterms. He would have helped to give, the end of the year exams. He would have helped to administer the exams. That was part of his duties. And he would have helped to grade papers. So I just, a lot of people are wondering, what did Michael Kohberger know when he arrived in Washington to pick up his son for this cross-country trip that, supposedly was pre-planned? I don't know if it was or wasn't, because we're hearing from Steve Gonsalves that he didn't buy the tickets, Michael, until December 10th. So what? And he arrived there on the 12th to 13th. So, but not really that pre-planned, in my opinion. Why was he there so early? And what was Michael told of the reason that he was picking up BK when BK still should have been working? So during this drive back from Washington back to Pennsylvania, we know they were stopped twice in Indiana for traffic violations, and BK's had to have been spinning at this point, and he had to have been starting to get paranoid, in my opinion, and I'm going to tell you why. But BK's father flew this cross-country trip, and its detour, this 8 to 9 hour detour, is back under scrutiny again. Now that we know more about the white Hyundai Elantra, and we now are learning more about these plane tickets. And if I were the parents of the victims, I would probably consider looking into filing a civil suit just to see if Discovery would show any information. So during this timeline of the trip, we know Michael flew to Spokane, Washington to meet Bryan. The two began the 2,500 journey back to Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. They were stopped twice in the span of just a few minutes on December 15th. Again, Bryan Kohberger should have been at work. The first stop was a Hancock County Sheriff's deputy who pulled them over for allegedly following a vehicle too closely. He let them off with a verbal warning. The second stop was an Indiana State Police trooper who stopped them for speeding. And I bet Bryan Kohberger was going faster, probably trying to get the heck out of Indiana after the first stop. The trooper had learned about the previous stop, also issued a verbal warning. And he learned about the previous stop supposedly from Michael and Bryan, who Bryan told that he asked where they were going, and Bryan said, "We're going for Thai food." Because that's not sketchy when you're traveling across the country with your dad. Again, Michael, Howard Blum told us that Michael had to be getting suspicious about this. So once they arrived back in Pennsylvania, it was around December the 17th. So this is really, we know Bryan Kohberger was arrested on the 30th. So just days before Bryan Kohberger was ultimately arrested. So let's look at the details from police. So the body cam footage from the second traffic stop was released. It showed the interaction between Michael and Bryan. And at the time, the Indiana police were supposedly not aware that the white Hyundai Elantra was a suspect in the Idaho crimes. I think, one time I would be like, okay, they were driving across the country, and Bryan Kohberger has had plenty of police stops. Twice in just a few minutes, I think they were trying to get body cam footage of BK. And I heard that this is, so speculation alert. I heard that that law enforcement was tailing Bryan Kohberger. They were tailing him and Michael back across the country. Because remember, he was, named as a suspect at that point. And I think that they were following them, but, maybe not. So behavior analysts have speculated that the dynamic of that long car trip have wondered what Michael might have observed about Bryan Kohberger's demeanor when they got pulled over. And Howard Blum who is the author that I interviewed, he's a two-time Pulitzer Prize nominated journalist, revealed that Michael might have noticed his son's erratic behavior and route changes and potentially signaling some, quote, psychological unraveling. And if you haven't watched my interview with Howard Blum, it's definitely worth watching. So the suspect vehicle, this is the white Hyundai Elantra. Prosecutors later used the fact that the two made the trip in the white Elantra as part of the case against BK. And after the crimes were committed, BK also allegedly researched into auto detailing and was interested in changing his car appearance. Of course he was. He had already changed the tags just 5 days after the crime. So now he's looking into changing the appearance of the car, probably looking to, add some pinstripes, maybe change the color. Following the plea deal, it was reported that Michael would have been called to testify about the trip if the case has proceeded to trial. And a lot of people are wondering if this is why Bryan Kohberger settled. Not that he has any empathy or compassion for his parents. I don't think that he does, but there is some enmeshment there. And I think that they're the only people that were supporting him at that point. So if he didn't want to lose every single person that was supporting him, he needed to make this, in my opinion, this concession, this he needed to plead guilty. So his dad didn't get called to the stand. And I think, that's another reason why victim families are upset. What would we have found out about Michael Kohberger and what he knew and those two traffic stops if he had been made to take the stand? What would we have found out about the timing of this trip? What was Michael Kohberger told about this trip? So the state trooper's body cam footage when he pulled Michael and Bryan over, has Michael on there explaining their travel plans. He said they were driving from Washington State University and heading home to the Pocono Mountains. And he pointed out that their car, a white Hyundai Elantra, was not the most suitable vehicle for heavy snow. And this is probably him explaining this bizarre 8 to 9 hour detour. Now, I can see taking a 1 or 2 hour detour or pulling over because of heavy snow, but I have to think that Michael Kohberger's wheels had to be spinning a little bit when they took this 8 to 9 hour detour. Let me know if you have a different opinion. So let's do some scrutiny. Let's take a look at this detour. So it was an unusually long route. The detour added hours to what was already a very long drive, you guys. And the prosecutors and true crime analysts have viewed this extended route as suspicious, as have many of you guys. Now, according to Howard Blum, Michael Kohberger, BK's father, reportedly observed Bryan's erratic behavior and multiple seemingly unnecessary route changes during the trip. So I am having a hard time believing that Michael Kohberger's head wasn't spinning. One, he's picking up his son and this why did they feel the need to say it was pre-planned? He's picking up his son to drive back with him across the country. Why, it's a long flight to go get him. They're driving this car back, in my opinion, the crime scene vehicle. What did Michael Kohberger know? And what did Bryan Kohberger really talk about with Marianne during all those phone calls? A total of 6 phone calls on the day of the crimes. So the relevance to the case is that Bryan Kohberger's guilty plea in 2025, in July of 2025, meant that Michael didn't have to get on the stand. He didn't have to testify about that detour. He didn't have to testify about his observations during the trip. He didn't have to explain why he was picking up his son when his son was supposed to still be working at Washington State University administering exams. He didn't have to explain why his son didn't have to take exams. So the timing of the drive is suspect, and the vehicle was a key piece of evidence in this crime. And, Michael Kohberger either wittingly or unwittingly helped Bryan Kohberger move this crime piece of evidence in this important crime across state lines from Washington to Albrightsville. So forensic analysis later revealed that BK panicked. This is forensic analysis of his cell phone and computer access. It revealed that BK panicked over the vehicle after reading news reports about a white Hyundai Elantra being sought in connection with the November 13th crime. And this panic led him to research how to clean and get rid of the crimes. Now, we heard from Steve Gonzalez that BK used professional cleaning agents on this car. And we heard from Bill Thompson that basically the car had been taken apart, and it was a taken apart car with a bucket of water next to it. So they had watched him cleaning this car meticulously while law enforcement had him under surveillance while they were trying to get probable cause so they could arrest him. So in the family statement in January of 2023, BK's family released a statement expressing their sympathy for victims' families and asserting their intention to support BK during the legal process. And after BK's guilty plea, it was reported that his parents would potentially have had to testify about the phone calls and that cross-country trip if that case had gone to trial. So I think that's interesting. And after BK's finally did plead guilty, his mother, Marianne, and one of his sisters did attend the sentencing hearing on July 23rd of 2025. Now, BK had 42 days to file an appeal. He did not, so that appeal period has now ended. He did not try to appeal it. So in a statement released through attorney in July of 2025, the family reiterated their request for privacy, noting they would continue to let the legal process unfold. And unfortunately, we still don't have a lot of answers. We do know that the family did file for bankruptcy or Chapter 11 bankruptcy twice, once in 1996 and the second time in 2010. I don't know if any of this contributed to Bryan Kohberger's psyche, because the crimes didn't happen until 2022. So I don't know. I don't think that's really that relevant. Let me know if you have a different feeling about it. So BK left all this stuff behind when he left Pullman. So I have a better idea after looking at the pictures. Let me see if I have those handy. I have a better idea of Bryan Kohberger's, why he didn't run in, and why the dad didn't set off an alarm when he came in and saw the apartment so cleaned out. It was cleaned out, but you can still see there was stuff left behind in the apartment. So I think that's, a given. I don't think it's that suspicious, like what I thought before, what his dad would have thought going into the apartment with everything removed. I do think it's weird that the shower curtain was taken down. I'm wondering what he told his dad about the shower curtain being missing. But Bryan Kohberger also reportedly has 4 mental health disorders. So let's talk about those. And then I want to talk about his creepy selfies. And what else do I have? We're going to go through his Pullman apartment. Oh, and Bryan Kohberger flipped out. All right, so we're going to talk more about Bryan Kohberger and how creepy he is and how he tried to wipe his phone search history, what his searches were. And I think Bryan Kohberger knew exactly what he was by the time he got to Washington State University. I think he knew he was a psychopath, and I think Ann Taylor knew it too. That's why she didn't want to allow the prosecution to use the word psychopath. It was a way to help keep evidence out without keeping the evidence out. So do you think that Ann Taylor intentionally tried to keep the word psychopath out in an effort to prevent the prosecution from presenting this evidence of him searching out the term psychopath and paranoid? Put a 1 in the chat if you think Ann Taylor knew full well. Put a 2 in the chat if you think it's just a coincidence. Was she trying to suppress the evidence? Because she filed a lot of motions to suppress. So Bryan Kohberger has 4 mental disorders, you guys. Let's talk about that. All right, so let me grab a sip of water. So, and now we get to find out finally when these diagnoses were made. So all 4 of these diagnoses were made in February of 2025, just 6 months before the trial was scheduled to begin. So this is according to Bryan Kohberger. So he was asked in prison if he'd ever been diagnosed with mental health disorders. He wrote that he had 4 disorders: autism, level 1, OCD. We're not shocked at that. We, have seen the footage of him with his red hands. ADHD and ARFID. So I do think that's interesting. And I think that it's really, we were all wondering when this autism diagnosis came in, right? And now we're finding out that it was the autism diagnosis came in way after he was arrested, not in his childhood at all. And remember, his mom worked with special needs kids. So I think that's very, very interesting. And I want to go to the parents next. So let me take this down. The family members, a lot of people are wondering, do they feel duped? Do they feel duped? So let's listen to the Gonzalez family talk about this with Nancy Grace. I'm going to go in 45 minutes. So if you haven't subscribed to Nancy Grace, it's definitely a really good thing. I'm not going to play the whole thing. I'm just going to play a little bit of it.
Have a tablet. He can watch movies. He can communicate with the outside world. I guarantee you, just give it a minute until people think this has died down. He is going to Zoom at some symposium.
Okay, just before I play the whole thing, I just want to do a sound check. Can you guys hear this interview? Can you hear it? Just a quick yes or no. Yes or no, could you hear the interview? Hello, anybody hear me? Yes, thank you. Okay. Thank you. Okay, thank you. This is our head mod, Enjaz, our other head mod. Mike, Donna is modding with us. And Susan is modding. Okay, thank you so much. And Holly's here. All right, thank you so much. And Barb is here. All right, great. Okay, so we've got, let's go ahead and listen in on this. And let me sit up a little bit because see if I can move myself over here. Yeah, let's do that.
He's going to have this weird cult following, like you mentioned, the Kohbergers. He can write a book. There's no Son of Sam laws in Idaho, I don't believe. He can even get married. I mean, it's so wrong. I feel like running out in the street and screaming.
So did you hear Steve there? He's trying to transfer out of Pennsylvania.
I think I just read somewhere the other day, which I know I did, that does one of the Menendez brothers have a child?
Yes, he has a daughter.
He had children.
And even Jorn Vandersloot. You know Jorn Vandersloot that murdered two young girls? He murdered Natalie Holloway and Stephanie Tassiana Flores under similar circumstances. His judge daddy protected him. He's had not one but two babies behind bars. He drinks, he does drugs, he smokes, he gambles. It's like insane. But again, screw them and the horse they rode in on. I want to talk about what, if anything, can be done now. Starting with, do you believe the other families were duped? If they had known the truth, would they have gone along with the plea?
I can't say 100%. But the thing is, I don't want to speak on behalf of them by any means, but I don't think that the other families necessarily wanted the truth. They didn't want to be lied to, but they didn't want details.
Yeah.
And we did. We weren't just like, okay, she was stabbed to death around 20. We're like, how many? Where? And because I do talk to Maddie's mom, and Maddie's mom is like, please, like, I don't, so I don't say anything to her when I speak to her about, what happened. She's like, I don't read that stuff. I don't watch it. Our thing is, we have kids, we have two that are older. We have two that are younger, and you can't tell them to stay off social media for the rest of their lives. And I don't want one of them open up TikTok and seeing crime scene photos of their sister or body cam. So we're trying to stay one ahead. And as a mother, even if I didn't have children, I would still, as much as it has traumatized me, I would still want to know what happened. I want to know what happened from top to bottom.
Christy, isn't it true? You basically got an email saying, hey, we got a deal.
Yes. On a Sunday afternoon, they sent it.
So imagine if they didn't open their email that day, if they were, doing something that Sunday, or they've been in a movie or something like that, and they would have found out from the news. You guys.
At 4:53 p.m. Steve happened to be checking his email a little later, around 6 or so, and he said, "What?" And we lost our minds. We immediately emailed them and said, "We need to talk, like now. Like, what has this been sent yet?" Have you offered it yet? What is going on? They sent us an email the next morning and said, we can meet at 3 today. And we said, you didn't answer. Has this been sent already? And they said, yes, it was sent yesterday evening to the defense. And so we met with them at 3 that day on Monday, and the plea had already been accepted. And we lost our minds. We were in that meeting. I mean, we were screaming, we were cussing, we were yelling, we were saying, why did you do this? How did you do this? You know, what happened? You just talked to us on Friday and told us that, you know, you had every anticipation of taking this all the way. We talked about court. I mean, we talked about a plea deal for like a second, and he just said, oh, I think that they might be wanting one, but we have no reason to give them one. You know, why would we? And we're like, yeah, right. Why would we? And he said, well, how do you guys feel about a plea deal? And we're like, no, absolutely not. No. Boom, moved on.
Yeah, he accepted the plea deal within the same hour that he got it. This man never wanted to fight for our children. Literally, I mean it. They fought for their lives, for their very last breath, and this man had no fighting. They fought hard all the way to the end, and he gave up within an hour of being given an opportunity to quit on these kids.
And you can just hear the frustration from the family members, because there is so much information that we would have gotten had this gone to trial. Michael Kohberger would have had to taken the stand. He would have had to have taken the stand and explained the cross-country trip. He would have had to explain what he was thinking when Bryan Kohberger was wanting to go home before he had finished his term. Mary Ann Kohberger would have had to have gotten on the stand and explained what she and Bryan Kohberger were talking about during these phone calls. And get this, you guys, it gets even weirder. So besides his like Norman Bates mother, father, super creepy text, you know, and him looking up that sick information of what he liked, what he was into, which was passed out, sleeping, voyeur. So basically non-consensual essay is what he was into. He would call his parents all the time, even to fall asleep, while hardly having any friends, the experts revealed on News Nation with Ashley Banfield. He had 18 personal contacts. This is from Heather Barnett with the Celebrate team, 18 in his phone. So think of all the people you meet, all the random numbers you have in your phone, right? He had 18 in there. And some of them were listed like this: girl I ran with, second girl I ran with, a contact, and in parentheses, hair. So there's mother, father, and his sister, and a few others, and the experts told us. And then BK would call his parents, mother and father, in these creepy, weird text messages, which reminded forensic experts of the big screen film by Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. And Jason Barnett from the Celebrate team said, it's the Bates Motel. It's the Bates Motel, referring to the Alfred Hitchcock 1960s film. So he said, this is the feeling of the movie, and mother is just super, super eerie. BK was so attached to his parents that it seemed like he needed to speak with them just to fall asleep. This is what Heather Barnett said. She said if one parent didn't respond, he would reach out to the other one. He would constantly text them, so not respecting boundaries even with his own parents, and call them starting as early as 5 or 6 in the morning. And so also at night, almost talk him into going to sleep and being able to rest. So he would call his mother and father so he could fall asleep. The Celebrate team also said that BK would take selfies, sometimes shirtless, flexing his muscles, and wouldn't send them to anyone, including the thumbs up one that we saw the morning of the crimes after he did away with Kaylee and Maddie and Ethan and Santa. And Heather said he didn't have any friends to send his selfies to. So let's continue on with this interview, because I do think that this is really, really telling.
That's the kind of prosecutor that you got to get. You got to get him out. You got to get real prosecutors in Idaho. We got some jobs to do. We got some work to do there.
Yeah, you have to have a prosecutor that, if you're in a death penalty state, believes in capital punishment.
Yeah, it's not your will. It's It's the victim's will. If they don't want it, then fine. But we had 4 people.
And Bill Thompson has never talked to us since that Zoom meeting that we had. And we were just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that you did that.
Wait a minute, he's never talked to you since? He's been all over the media, but
I told you guys I thought Bill Thompson was doing his victory lap and that he was doing only friendly outlets where he, knew he was going to get softball questions. He never talked. I mean, I would think with how upset the Gonzalez family were that would be a conversation you would want to have just to clear the air. Nope.
Hasn't talked to you?
Nope. When we did get a briefing, it was from the investigator, the 2 investigators.
And Ashley Jennings, so the deputy. But Bill Thompson, because, I mean, we were going after him. I mean, our whole family was in different windows, and we were all just coming at him. We were just like, Bill, like, how could you do this to us?
So this guy did not have the balls to talk to you after the deal because he knew he had done the wrong thing.
Yeah.
I said, did you at least get some details? Did you at least find out about the kill kit, the knife, anything? He goes, Steve, we'll never get those details. You're never going to get those details. It's not important. He's just going to lie to us. And I said, you are absolute idiot. You have no idea who this person is. He is going to write a book, and I'm going to learn about the sickest details through his prophet book, through its sister, or through some professor, whatever way he does it. I'm going to hear about him, and you're an idiot for not even knowing who you're dealing with.
Right. So they can go ahead and he can write a book in prison, and his family can, add to the book, and they can get all the proceeds and do an end run around the family members. The victim's family members.
I think maybe I can get a straight answer from you guys. What do you believe Kohberger's motive was? Not that the state needs to prove it. I don't know why they kept talking about we can't prove motive. It doesn't matter. You don't have to prove motive in a murder case.
Well, I think because Steve Thompson, I think the powers that be, Howard Blum called it when he was on my show. He told us that the powers that be did not want this to go to trial. And, after learning about all of the people that were going to get on the stand regarding WSU and University of Idaho, they didn't want it. They didn't want the publicity. It was going to interfere with enrollment at their universities, in my opinion, allegedly.
But what do you believe was his motive?
I think that he had been watching either Kaylee or Maddie, and I don't think the others were involved. And that's why he went straight up to that room. That house is so confusing. It's they're just a build on from hell. They just built on and built on and built on and throughout the years. So it is a very confusing floor plan. And we know that he went in there very quickly. He wasn't, he went in and he went out. And he may have tried to walk into Kaylee's room first. We don't know. And Kaylee's bed was empty. So he's like, I'm going into Xana's. Yeah, we're all assuming that he only went into Maddie's room first. And that's the only room he went in. Right. But it's very possible that he looked in Kaylee's room. She wasn't in there and then went into Maddie's after. Or Maddie's. And maybe he went into Maddie's and then got mad because Kaylee woke up and was like, oh, there's 2 in here. But I think it was some sort of an obsession, some sick, twisted, stalking. Maybe he hated one of them. Maybe it was both. I think it was hate.
There was no blood on Kaylee's door. So that would lead us to believe he went there first, opened the door, seen the dog or seen something, and then said, okay, there's nobody here. Then I'm thinking he went to Maddie's room. That makes the most sense because I think if he had gone to Maddie's room first, well, first of all, there would be no reason to go to Kaylee's room. We'll never know unless he writes a book, but there would be no reason to go to Kaylee's room, right? All right, let's go. Let's talk about some just a weird interaction that Bryan Kohberger had. He absolutely lost his mind at a hotel clerk for overcharging him. So this is, he booked a room on a travel website. This is just months before he committed these crimes, just according to a newly released police report. And according to the law enforcement, he showed up alone
at a hotel in Pullman, Washington on June 30th of 2022. And this makes me wonder too. We've heard a lot of things where he disappeared the week of Thanksgiving. We've heard, rumors that he disappeared for a week, and some people think he stayed in a hotel during that period too. Was this at the urging of Michael and Marianne Kohberger? Did they tell him, change your car tags and go to a hotel? But the documents say that BK made a beeline for the front desk where a female employee was apparently training that day, and apparently got mad when he thought she overcharged him for the room while he was checking into his hotel. They said that BK was really upset at being double charged, but once she fixed the mistake, he was nice and even began flirting with her. Of course he did. Of course he did. The next day, the worker told the police that she encountered BK again in the hallway and that they chatted about knife sheaths and collecting knives, as well as defense weapons and knife collection. So this is really creepy. So he was thinking about it then, and maybe thinking about it in terms of her. After the chilling chat, especially in light of what he went on to do, BK left the hotel, and several months later went on to do away with the 4 innocent college students, and managed to avoid the capital punishment, even though he believes in it. We've learned that BK believes in it. He avoided it for himself by simply pleading guilty. So let's talk about, we're going to go back and listen to a little bit about this, but let's talk about his searches. So my sourcing on this is Fox News and the Celebrite team in their interview. So BK's lawyer, this is Ann Taylor, did not, and I'm going to be curious what you guys put on that poll, did not want prosecutors to describe BK as a psychopath or in other terms if the case went to trial. And she won that motion, which I think is disturbing, because we found out that on his PC, his personal computer, psychopath was a normal word that he typed into the browser. He knew what he was, you guys. Did Ann Taylor know of what he was too? I think so, in my opinion. Heather Barnett, senior director of the forensic research in Celebrite, said, quote, but he could have said it was for his major, which was criminology or research. In addition to frequent searches for the phrase and related terms like psychopaths, paranoid. So he was feeling paranoid after getting those 2 police stops with his dad on his way from Albrightsville, Pennsylvania to WSU. And he's looking up psychopath. He's looking up wiretapping. He's looking up psychopaths paranoid. And he spent Christmas night reading in depth about SKs. Of course he did. That was a little Christmas present for himself, right? So Barnett says he became paranoid. Before BK pled guilty, his lawyers had to ask the court to block prosecutors from referring to the word schmurder, which they did not win. They tried to block prosecutors from referring to bushy eyebrows. And they didn't win either of those motions, but they did successfully prevent the prosecutors from using the terms psychopath and sociopath in front of the jurors, which is really strange since those were searches that he did. And this is what Ann Taylor wrote in their court filing. She said, to label Mr. Kohberger as a schmurderer, the alleged weapon consistent with a empty sheath as a schmurder weapon, or assert that in any way the 4 decedents were done away with by Mr. Kohberger, denies his right to a fair trial and the right to be presumed innocent. She did lose that motion, because of course, how can you have a trial where he's on trial for doing this and not use that word? But she tried. And she did get psychopath and sociopath taken out. She said it would amount to name calling and be unfairly prejudicial if the case had gone to trial. But he was searching those terms. So would the prosecution have been able to bring up those searches, the fact that he was looking up psychopath? Was this Ann Taylor's way of trying to prevent that bit of evidence from getting in? Like put a 1 if you think it was, and put a 2 if you think it was not. The analysis of BK's computer found that he had successfully wiped some key information, including details that would have explained the motive. This is according to Jared Barnett, who is part of the Celebrite team. He used software to fully delete files. So he was using professional software to get rid of his files. Bryan Kohberger was, and also cleared his Google Chrome browser history from October 12th through November 16th. And of course, we know the crimes that took place on November 13th. So Jared said, I think the most important thing to me is that he cleaned up what was probably the story all the victims' families need to hear, right? The why, the how, why my kid, all of this is gone. And we tried like crazy to find something, to tell these families, and it just isn't there. So I thought that was really interesting, especially in light of the interview. So let's go back to the interview now that we kind of set the table with that. And again, this is an interview with Nancy Grace. If you haven't subscribed to her, you will want to. She does a lot of great work.
And you don't see blood on that door, but the other door downstairs, they do see blood on it. So I think we're just going through this, reverse engineering it. We've talked to detectives and things like that now. We believe that explains who he was going for. And he definitely stalked them. He stalked multiple girls on that hillside. He's a copycat killer, and he just was really poor at it. And you can look at his handwriting. He might be a PhD student in Pennsylvania, but he would have had a way harder time out here. He looked like a little kid, like a little fifth grader writing that paper. So I can't believe that's.
God, there's his handwriting right there. Subject to minute by minute verbal. He didn't get the L on there. Threats, harassment. He's whining in prison. He thinks he's got a personal chef and a personal butler to wait on him in prison. He thinks, because I think in jail, as I shared with you, during the time that he was in Latah County Jail, it was really small, right? It was like 20, I think there was 29 people jailed with him during the time that he was incarcerated in Latah County. I don't know what it was like in Ada County. But, he was getting his vegan meals. He was getting to watch TV. He had it pretty good for being in jail.
Why do you think everybody is attacking Dylan and Bethany, acting like they did something wrong or even part of the murders? It's insane.
I hate it. We absolutely hate it. And it just, I fear, and these girls are so young, and for them to have to deal with this for forever. And I'm not going to say that the events that occurred that night were strange. Do we think they were involved in any way? No. Could they have saved the kids if they were to call 911 right then and there? No. But
so there you have it. For everybody who's like coming online to defend Bryan Kohberger and impugn a 19 and a 20-year-old, the parents are telling us that even if 911 had been called immediately, it would not have saved them. And the crimes didn't sound the way that we think that they did, because Ethan and Xana didn't call 911 either.
But you when you go into fear, you go into that flight or fight mode, and maybe that was they fought. They flew, and they cuddled up together. It is very clear.
What's interesting about what you said when you were talking about you saw LA law enforcement come up in your driveway, you ran to the bedroom. Mm-hmm. That, it's hard to explain in the heat of the moment, the fog of war, why anybody does anything that they do. Yeah. Why did I throw all my books down? I don't know why I did that. Why did you run to the bedroom? I don't know. Why does anybody do anything? And
whatever they did, Bethany and Dylan, it was the right thing. You know why? Because they're alive. They survived. And I think, the reason people are impugning them is because it's for clicks and views. That's my opinion. Let me know if you have a different one. I think it's related to clicks and views. It's a way to keep everything going. So let's talk about these weird similarities to Norman Bates from the Psycho movie. This is Heather and Jared Barnett. They were hired by the prosecution to download his phone. So they tell us that, as I just shared with you, he would call his parents all the time to fall asleep. He hardly had any friends. He had 18 contacts in his phone. He called his mother. His mother was listed as mother, and his father, his sister, and a few others. So 18 total, including his sisters. He would call his parents, mother and father, in text messages, and that's where that kind of reminded them of the Psycho movie, the Bates Motel. And it does have this feeling of like, mother. It just is kind of creepy how enmeshed he was with Mary Ann. And he said, if one parent didn't respond when BK was reaching out, he would reach out to the other parent. So the parents weren't allowed to have any boundaries. And it just makes me wonder, like, what was really going in the house with him growing up. We know that this was their youngest child. He was, a boy. Did they, overly baby this guy, and not set personal boundaries and just say, if I don't pick up the phone, you can leave me a message, and that's the end of it. You could text me one time, and then that's it. But instead, he's just allowed to call incessantly, text incessantly, harass the parents through the other parents, and they allowed it. No boundaries. No boundaries. No rules for precious little Bryan. So they said that BK would take selfies, sometimes shirtless, flexing his muscles, and he wouldn't send them to anyone. He didn't have friends to send them to. She said it was normal for him to take selfies and do absolutely nothing with them. They were just for himself. He would search out the disturbing terms that we've already talked about. And they said, the easiest way of all the terms is consistently around non-consensual. He wiped his search history. And, as soon as he was going to be held accountable, he got a plea deal from Bill Thompson and the prosecution. And now he wants to transfer from his prison. He wants to go to Club Med, right? Club Fed, they call it, where he can play tennis and doesn't have to be in a cage, where he can, reproduce, have other little BKs with his, sycophant, creepy, just like, some other people who shouldn't have, like Jorn Vandersloot. So, he's complaining that he's getting yelled at in prison, and I don't think that's helping him. I think, if anything, he's just making it worse for himself. But he refuses to reveal the motive in the scribbled documents, complaining that he has 4 health disorders. So in the newly released handwritten guilty plea document, BK has revealed his refusal to share any details about his crime, as well as the claims he was diagnosed with 4 mental health disorders. In a 9-page document, in his handwriting, shows his answers to multiple questions about his ability to enter a plea, his awareness of his legal rights, and the details of the plea deal strike with the prosecutors. Remember, this guy had his master's degree in criminology. He understood how the criminal justice system worked very well. He was absolutely, and that's why he's filing all these complaints, right? He knows how the game works. So he's going to complain enough in hopes that they move him to a nicer prison or give him his way. This is a guy that is not used to hearing no. His parents would not even set basic boundaries. Like, you can call me one time, and if I don't pick up, you can leave me one message, and then that's it. You can't continue. You can't text me over and over. They could have set some boundaries. They didn't. They chose not to. So when asked if he'd been ever diagnosed with a mental health disorder, he wrote autism, level 1, OCD, ADHD, and ARFID. And these were all made in February of 2025, according to Bryan Kohberger. So Ann Taylor rushed in to get these diagnoses. I don't even know if they're true. I do think he has OCD. I'm not buying that he's autistic. I think it's, I think with this mom being a special needs teacher, this is just my opinion. Let me know if you have a different one. I don't think he's autistic. I think that he conveniently got this diagnosis in an effort to get rid of the capital punishment. I think, and just to be clear, somebody who is autistic is no more likely to commit a crime like this than someone who isn't autistic. So I don't think that was the only thing going on. But here's his acknowledgement of the plea deal. So the defense, of course, Ann Taylor's, trying everything to get him off on the capital punishment. Because if she could have gotten that taken off the table, I think she would have gone to trial and tried to beat Bill Thompson. And I think Bryan Kohberger would have too, because he didn't have anything to lose. But here's his guilty thing for all the people who say he pled guilty. He filled this out. This is him doing it with his own handwriting. They're asking him, are you under the influence of anything? No. Are you capable of understanding the proceedings? Yes. Do you claim you're mentally incapable of understanding the proceedings or what it means to plead guilty to a crime? No. Is there anything going on in your life that affects your ability to enter a voluntary guilty plea? No. So for people who are saying, oh, he had to plead guilty. No, he didn't. He didn't. If you really thought you didn't do it, there's no way you would agree to spend the rest of your life in prison. You wouldn't sit in jail for 2.5 years and waive your right to a speedy trial. If you really thought if you knew you didn't do it. He pled guilty because he did it. Is there anything going on in your life that affects your ability to enter a voluntary guilty plea? No. But the people are going to keep claiming that he's innocent because, clicks and views. So the only prescribed medicine he was on was levothyroxine, a commonly used medication to treat hypothyroidism. This is when the thyroid doesn't produce enough synthroid and you have to take some supplement to it. I know a little bit about this one because I take the same one. I have a scar right here. I had a goiter when I was in high school. So investigators found no connection between him or the other 4 students. And during the sentencing, when he was confronted by the families of the victims, he respectfully declined. He could have had a say then, but he didn't. Do you understand the court accepts your guilty plea, that you may not be able to withdraw your plea at a later date? Yes. Is there anything else you want to tell the court about why you're pleading guilty? No. Have you discussed the elements of the offense for which you are charged with your attorney? Yes. So Ann Taylor knows. She knows why. So prosecutor Bill Thompson has come under fire, especially from the Gonzalez family. But, they're not the only family members that have been upset. I shared with you guys during the last live stream that the Chapins and also the Madison Mogen's mom, the Laramies and stepfather, have had to go to court to ask the city of Moscow not to release. Could you please not release pictures of my daughter and son lying there and whatever they were wearing that night done away with? Can you please not release those? And this is not the Gonzalez family doing this. These are not the families that didn't want the plea deal. These were families that agreed to the plea deal. I don't think they thought in their wildest dreams that they would have to go back to court and have to fight to keep pictures of their loved ones from being released. So the plea advisory document reveals that BK had no intention of giving answers to the families of the victims. And, he signed it. And this is that creepy jail video that I showed you guys already of him just standing there with the red hands. You can see how red his hands are here. And yeah, very, very interesting. Let me go back to this. Let me pull this up. So we're going to go back to this in just a second, but I do want to check in with chat as it's been a minute. Let me put myself over here. Oh, I'm getting a question. What the heck is ARFID? It is, I can't talk about it too much on here. I can talk about it a little bit because this is like one of the things that gets you into trouble on YouTube, but it is a restrictive ED. Okay, it's a restrictive ED. And I wish I could talk about it more because it's a great question, but I really just can't. All right, let's see where we are with chat. I'm just curious what you guys think about what Ann Taylor knew. And Michael's saying to the mods, please don't time people out for having different thoughts. Yeah, this is a critical thinkers channel. I bring you all the information so you can make up your own mind. By the way, we're going to be talking about the baby Emmanuel case tonight. And after that, I don't know if you guys have seen the Netflix documentary, Unknown Number, about the catfish who was texting these high schoolers, but I'm going to talk about that. I just added that in today at the last minute because I was just saw it day before yesterday. And then I watched it again and took a whole bunch of notes. And I want to go through and talk about what was the motive of the catfish person. But if you guys want to come up and talk about it with me, I would love to have a really good discussion on this Netflix series. And if you haven't seen it, you will want to see it next. Thank you so much, Lisa, for your $4.99 super sticker. That is so kind of you. Let me see. I think I have some sound effects I can do now. Let's see. Yay! And thank you so much, NJazz, for the gifted channel membership. This is a feature that they just added. Thank you to Michael L. Cole for the $1.99 super sticker. Thank you so much for that. Thank you to NJazz. Oh, wow. She gifted 5 reporter room memberships, you guys. If you got one of those, please make sure you say thank you to NJazz. So that's a total of 6. Thank you, NJazz. And thank you. Oh, wow. NJazz, thank you for the 20-pound super sticker. Thank you so much. That is really, really kind of you. Thank you so much. Okay, so just thought that we would do that. I thought that was a kind of fun and just a nice way to say thank you. I realize I probably look like I'm copying a little bit. I think there's another content creator. I think Justin does it on his channel, and I do like it. So I'll give him credit for doing it first. But this is a feature that was just added on this platform that I'm streaming from, so it is new. Donna said, "Who would want to see those photographs?" There are people that do. Teresa thinks Steve G is handsome. Susan says, "Why, when you're highly sensitive to taste and texture, certain foods make you gag." Dion says, "I hope his plans don't work." SJ said he studied all of the SKs, Joseph D'Angelo, the Golden Gate, refused to provide any info and plead guilty. He's never going to tell us why. Can I Kick It said, "I want to watch the Netflix Kathy." Yeah, I'm going to do that after the Emmanuel Harrow. We're going to do Emmanuel Harrow next because his parents were in court today. So I have not a long update, but just an important one, though. Definitely important. Holly said, "That sounds interesting. Thank you so much." But the catfish one, oh, you guys, you definitely want to join me for this one. If you, it's crazy. I watched it. I was so gobsmacked. I went to YouTube. I could hardly find anybody who was talking about it. I watched it again, took a whole bunch of notes, and I'm like, I'm going to definitely talk about this. Donna says, if BK gets his way moving to Pennsylvania, he gets everything then. Yeah. And you can see why the Gonzalez's are so frustrated. KB said that woman is sick, the catfish one. Oh, yeah, she is. We're going to talk about her, and we're going to talk about why, what the motivation was. Lisa said, I think Kohberger revered SK so much he aspired to be with. I agree with you, Lisa. I think that his bachelor's degree in psychology was him figuring out who he was. And his criminology degree, his master's degree, was figuring out who he wanted to be. That's my opinion. Let me know if you have a different one. Michael says, welcome to the brand new channel members. Thank you so much, Donna, for the $1.99 super sticker. That is so nice of you. Thank you so much. Let me see if I can get the applause. I have to go down here. Let's see. All right. Yay. I do like that. I think that's a really nice little touch. So Justin, if you're watching this, I know I'm copying you. But it just got added on as a feature. It is called Unknown Number, and it's really, really good. Francie said, BK's parents, if they didn't know, they have had to have had some suspicions. I agree with you. All right. So I do want to say thank you to our producers, Enja, Sasha Angel, George Brown, Michael Cole, Christy Ballantyne. Thank you to our channel members. We're not done. We're going to go over and talk about the Emmanuel Harrow case. And then we're going to talk about unknown number. Oh my gosh, you definitely don't want to miss that live stream. The Emmanuel Harrow is going to be just down and dirty, short and sweet. We're going to get right into it. And then unknown number, we're going to deep dive it. We're going to talk about why, what the motivation was behind this, this catfishing. It is absolutely bonkers, and definitely worth a conversation. It's something you're definitely not going to want to miss being a part of. And thank you to all of our awesome channel members. If you want your name to appear just like this in all of my live streams and videos, hit the join button. Subscribing is free, and joining does cost I think it's just under $3. I think it's $2.99. And thank you so much for super thanks and coffee gratitude from our last 2 live streams. Thank you so much. And thank you also for gifted channel memberships. Thank you so much. Okay, so let's continue on with this interview. Let me take this down.
Attacking those girls is just like more victimization. Another thing, I know you've got to go, find it really interesting that Washington State had this long history of his anti-woman, misogynist, stalking behavior and did nothing. That's really interesting. If he had been thrown out, he wouldn't have even been there.
Exactly.
Yep. He should have been thrown out before he ever killed these kids. That's the truth. If they should have set a standard and said, look, we don't put up with this in our university. You cross the line, you're done. It's not even our decision. It's just your behavior. We're holding you accountable. You should behave like this. That's the expectations in Washington State University. And you either do it or you don't.
Bravo. I agree with that. And I've been saying that from the get-go, that I think it's really disturbing that he faced no accountability for his behaviors at Washington State University. And despite all of these young men and young women coming forward to sound the alarm, they did nothing. And they did have options. They could have gone to HR. And if they had gone back through his resume, they would have found out that he had lied about dates on his resume, and they would have had an excuse to get rid of him. And maybe we would not be covering this case right now at all. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me. I'm headed over right now to do the Emmanuel Harrow update. You definitely don't want to miss that. The parents were in court today. And please consider subscribing. It lets YouTube know that I'm doing a good job covering the case, that I'm providing you with good information. And give this a thumbs up. And thank you so much for joining me today.